We celebrate this beautiful feast of All Saints' Day, where we recognize from the scriptures and from the centuries of living out our faith that there are indeed men and women who walked this earth and had holiness. And the church recognized that holiness and canonized them, named them. And they're up in heaven right now praying for us and interceding for us. And their lives and their writings offer us a roadmap to get closer to Christ because it's all about Him. The saints all point to Christ. We also recognize that there have been men and women in our own life who have achieved holiness. Now, the church doesn't officially recognize them, but many of us recognize holiness in them. And those two words, holy and saint, are interchangeable. They came from the same Latin word, sanctus. So a saint is holy, and a holy person can live a saintly life. We also, at the beginning of November, we pray for our brothers and sisters, people that we've known in our lives, family members, friends, fellow parishioners, who have left this world through death, but are either with Christ right now in heaven or on a journey towards Him. And we pray for them, as is our tradition, because we know that our prayers are efficacious, and we know too that they need our prayers. And that we're here today praying for those. Keep those people in mind as we offer the most powerful prayer that we can offer, and that's the prayer of Jesus Christ Himself, offering Himself for them. So during this state of purification, an act of God's mercy and love, so that when they do arrive in heaven, there is nothing that will keep them from fully loving God and praising God, because they realize in this state of purification what God is doing for them, how He has saved them. And they fall all the more deeply in love with Christ. And those individuals want us to be with them one day in heaven. They want us to become saints. Because they have, whether they're on their way or they're in heaven, at the moment of our death, we all come in the presence of God. And we see Him for who He is. And so they know what their deficits were. They knew and know how they fell short of sanctity, of holiness, of an extraordinary virtuous life. And they don't want that for you. They want you to be holy because they finally understand who God is and that God is going to offer them eternal happiness and can offer us happiness in this life. So these very people that were great in the faith or not so great in the faith want us to be great in the faith. And all of this begs the question, how do we become saints today? What does that look like, and what does that live like? Well, I want to tell this through a story of a man who in 1953 arrived in the train station, Chicago train station, and got off of the train in order to become a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And as he got off the plane, tall guy, bushy gray hair, big mustache. Got off the plane, got off the train. There was this big group of delegates there from all walks of life, there to congratulate him, to welcome him, and to take him to a big reception. And as he's getting off the train, he sees them and he spends a few moments with them, shaking some hands with the mayor and so on. But then he doesn't stay long. He moves on. He moves on to a black woman, an elderly black woman, who when he was walking down the steps of the train car, he caught sight of her by herself. And she had these two large suitcases, and she was struggling and no one was helping her. So he excused himself from all these accolades and goes to her and asks her if he can help her. And she says yes and is grateful, and he picks up the 2 suitcases and puts them on the train car and helps her up the train car and wishes her well in her journeys. And then he comes back to this delegation. He apologizes for excusing himself and then goes on with them. That man's name was Dr. Albert Schweitzer. He was a philosopher, a theologian, a humanitarian, an accomplished musician. He was also a doctor and a scientist. And you would think to yourself, any of us could fall into this, that a man of so many degrees and so many accomplishments and so many people admiring him, that he could think to himself, I have it all. I don't need anything or anyone. I'm a self-made person. I can do this on my own. But here's the thing, too, about Dr. Albert Schweitzer. It's ultimately the reason why he got the Nobel Peace Prize, is that he left all of that behind in order to become a missionary in West Africa. And he spent most of his life with him and his wife among the natives of West Africa, serving the poorest of the poor and the dying and the sick. He constructed a hospital. He spent years caring for their needs, and then as a scientist and a medical doctor, figuring out what was going on and coming up with new therapies in order to care for them. How was he able to do that when so many of us don't even really see our need for God, and far less accomplishments than that? Well, I think that the key is here in our gospel reading. In Matthew 5, what we call the Beatitudes. Because here, Jesus is offering us a roadmap for our lives if we are going to be followers of his. And a roadmap for holiness and virtue, and a roadmap to become a saint. You see, when we think of saints, we think of St. Mary and St. Joseph and St. Francis, and through history and the passage of time, we place all of them so far up on pedestals that their lives and what they lived and lived for is unattainable for us, and so we do not pursue sainthood. We settle with mediocrity in our Christian life. And we think that that's good enough. How many people that are even not here today among us, and we want here among us, say things like, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Isn't that a way of saying, I believe in God, but I'm not willing to do the work that God is asking me to do? Which really isn't work at all when you think about the reward that comes with it, and I'll get to that in a second. But Jesus starts with, and each line that he gives, a quality of what it looks like to be a Christian. His view of Christianity, which is really the only view, the definition of Christianity. It's right here in the Beatitudes. Blessed are, and then off he goes with each quality. But he begins with, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the poor in spirit. That's Albert Schweitzer. A person who's poor in spirit recognizes his or her spiritual poverty. Let me say it another one. A person who's poor in spirit recognizes his or her need for God, and then lives their life always with that recognition before them. my need for God. A person who says, I'm spiritual but not religious, does not recognize their need for God, and they do not follow that road. They are self-sufficient when it comes to the Christian faith. They make it up along the way as they go. But it's not just them. Any of us who are sitting in pews this morning are susceptible to the same lie. And it's interesting, too, that in Matthew's Gospel, in the Beatitudes, Jesus starts with, blessed are you who recognize your need for God. But then every other quality that follows that is about not just our relationship with God, but our relationship with other people and the needs that other people have too. Meaning, what Jesus is saying to us is that we will never really be able to fully recognize the needs of others and meet them, those needs, the way that they deserve and the way that we so-called love them, unless we first recognize our own need for God. And this was Albert Schweitzer. With all of his degrees, with all of his accomplishments, with all the accolades, with the Nobel Peace Prize, he recognized along the way, first and foremost, that he needed God. And he pursued that need. He didn't rest on his spiritual laurels or on the fact that my mom and dad was Christian or my grandparents are Christian. He never came to the realization that what Christ was offering him in the modern age was irrelevant to him. But anything but irrelevant. Everything to him. And it was from that then that he was able to recognize the needs of others and respond to that. And what's most brilliant about his story, I think, especially when we consider today's Feast of All Saints, and we pray for our loved ones, is what that word blessed means when it comes to us through the Greek in the Scriptures. In English, it's beatitude or blessed. They mean the same thing from the Greek. But it also means happy. Happy. Happy are you when you recognize your need for God. And then pursue that need. And happy are you, as it goes down each one of those qualities, are you when you recognize the need of other people and respond to both. Let me ask you this question. Who here wants to be happy? And not just in heaven with God, but here and now, who wants to be happy? We all do. We all want to be happy. And what Jesus is saying to us is that if we follow the Beatitudes, not only will we be blessed on the road to sanctity, able to be saint-like, able to grow in holiness, able to grow in virtue, but we'll also be happy. And yet, so many of us waste so much of our years and our energy pursuing happiness on our own and thinking along the way that God can't make me most happy. And so we grasp for it on our own. Think of it this way. Up and down my priesthood, I have run into Catholics in every parish I've served in, who either in action or even in words, but definitely in action, have shown they are not interested in growing their faith. They show up at Mass, and that's about it. And think to themselves that this is holiness. And this is all I need. This is what my parents taught me. And this is what their parents taught me. And this is what I grew up with. And I do 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe things. And that's it. And yet what Jesus is proposing to us is a lifetime of recognizing our need for God and allowing Him to fill that need, and then not just for us, so that then we can see the need of others and respond to it. And that's what makes us happy. But we have somehow fallen into the lie that I don't need to grow my faith. And I say it's a lie because it doesn't come from God. God is calling us every day to grow in sanctity and holiness and virtue and to share that as gifts to other people. And so it can only come from one place. When we become self-satisfied in the state of our spiritual life as it is and as it has been for years sometimes and decades, that self-satisfaction comes from the enemy, not from God. From the enemy. Who doesn't want your happiness and doesn't want the happiness of your children and the other people that love you the most? I hear this all the time from parents. I just want my children to be happy. Then pursue holiness, sanctity, virtue. Follow the Beatitudes, and you will be far more capable of being a walking sermon to them. That's a title that Albert Schweitzer received when he received the Nobel Peace Prize. A man coined that about him. There goes a walking sermon. Not one that condemns, but invites. One who, by the way we live our lives, it is attractive. How many atheists have we made as Christians simply by not living out our sanctity in the fullness of what God calls us to be saints? How many people and members of our family have we disinspired? If this is what Christianity looks like, I want no part of it. But we do want holiness because we want happiness. And we do want happiness for our children and our loved ones. And the two go together. Blessed are you, happy are you, if you recognize your need for God and then respond to it. And then recognize that holiness is not putting yourself as a statue up on a pedestal, but just simply saying yes to God across your life. And never, ever falling into the lie that where you are now in your spiritual life is enough. It's not enough for you, and it's not enough for this world that needs us to be saints, to be who God called us to be, and that we have the potential to be. And then the very things that you want for your loved ones, for all those that you bemoan that they're not here with you, or they're one among those people who say, I'm a spiritual person but not a religious person, and you wonder what you can do to change that. You change. You be changed by recognizing your need for God. And then let God help you see their needs and how to respond to it by filling up with God. And then you will become that walking sermon.